Welcome to Never Buy the Book podcast. This is your host, Kelly Schols. At 24, I was dead broke and a full-blown alcoholic. By the time I was 40, I was completely debt-free and a millionaire. Now I share my secrets to success and transformation with audiences around the world as a speaker, author, success coach, and of course, your podcast host. Each Never Buy the Book episode features a guest who has overcome obstacles to build a life of incredible fulfillment. Today, I'm honored to interview Sandee Sgarlata, author, speaker, retired U.S. national and international figure skating coach, and certified life coach who has built a career with people to help them create lasting and significant change. Today, we'll discover what makes Sandee tick. We'll unpack the loss she experienced as a girl, the addiction she struggled with as a young child, and finally, she'll share how she began her quest to find and maintain a sense of peace and happiness in her life. We've titled this episode after her book, Happiness Solved, Climbing 100 Steps. Hi, Sandee. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So happy to be here, Kelly.
Good. Thank you for being here. And I got to say, I actually read your book. I finished it this morning.
I love it. I love it.
Great book.
Thank you.
Absolutely loved it.
Thank you.
So, Happiness Solved, Climbing 100 Steps. Tell me what that means to you.
So the Climbing 100 Steps is the portion of the book that is a kind of a mini memoir of mine. So as I say in the book, my life was so happy. There was 100 steps that went from the river dock to our house. And every time I climbed those steps, I just felt like a rock star. And could have been, nature, being in nature or the calming effect the water had, or because I was a figure skater, there was definitely a sense of accomplishment and a challenge that it presented it. So one day at the age of 12, it was 2 weeks before my 13th birthday, me and my girlfriend, I was kind of called home early. My parents had been away celebrating their like a second honeymoon kind of thing.
So and I hate to interrupt, but where was this at?
This was in Severna Park, Maryland, which is outside of Annapolis.
Okay.
Yes. So the Severn River is the river that Annapolis is on, right before you reach the Chesapeake Bay.
Okay.
And it's beautiful, beautiful area. If you've never been there, you got to see it. It's truly delightful. So I was called home early, and my friend, her older brother, brought me home by boat because it was quicker than a car ride. So she and I we're climbing those 100 steps, and we're running up, and we're laughing and smiling. And my father greeted us at the door and asked my friend to leave. And he told me that my older brother had died while he was serving the U.S. Army in Germany. Oh, wow. And it was like being kicked in the stomach. It was just, my whole world just collapsed right there.
Mm-hmm. And how much older was your brother?
He was 6 years older than me. 6
years older. Okay. So right before your 13th birthday.
Right before my 13th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was tough. I mean, I still miss him. It's been 42 years.
Uh-huh.
I miss them, and you try to remember the things you can remember without, getting too sad, because time heals all wounds.
Yeah.
Not for my mom. It's still very raw. When my mother read the book, it was very hard for her to read my story.
So you do talk about it quite a bit in your book, and really that's what your book is kind of about, is how you overcame that, and not only dealing with your brother's death, but what you dealt with after that with your addiction and that. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, during that time, and like I said, this was in the late 70s, seeking out professional help was out of the question. So while my mother did the best she could, and I don't talk about this in the book because, I didn't want to make anybody look bad or make anybody wrong. Right.
Right.
But my mom kind of checked out for a good 10 years. And wasn't until this was in my book and I actually removed it, but it wasn't until the day my son was born, and he was about 10 minutes old. And I looked at him and I had just a smidgen of what my mother must have gone through.
Oh, wow.
Because, you, as a parent, with that immense love also comes the greatest fear that you could lose that child. And to this day, it's still, I start having anxiety. My son drives home from college in 2 days, and it's a 9-hour drive, and I'm starting to get anxious and just trying to practice what I preach and, let it go. So back to your question, what had happened is that I never dealt with those intense feelings of grief and loss. And instead, I made up a story in my mind that he wasn't really dead, that he was going to come back someday. And that stemmed from the viewing, and my mother looked at him and said, he doesn't look real. He looks like a mannequin. So I took that and ran with it and was like, okay, he's not really dead. He's coming back someday. So that's how I dealt with it. And
so you buried everything then?
Yep. Just pushed it all inside. And the other part to that is that I made up another story that my happiness caused bad things to happen.
Okay.
And which is crazy. It doesn't.
Right.
And once I finally learned that, it was like, okay, bad things are not going to happen. And it was in therapy one year that the therapist said, okay, so your brother died in 1978. It's now 1996. Has anything bad happened? I'm like, no, nothing. Nobody's died. Nothing bad has happened. So it was kind of like, okay. So what ended up happening is just, of course, I was like any other high school young adult, into my late teens and early 20s. And, I drank beers. I never really liked marijuana. I literally only drank beer. That was it. And one day after work, a friend of mine who I kind of had a crush on, we were coworkers, 11 years older than me, he pulled out some cocaine. And all these years, it had been put in front of me multiple times. And I was like, no way. My brother, part of the reason he died was that he had a lot of drugs in his system.
Right.
Which caused him to fall out of a window. And so I was just like, no, I am not using drugs. And it was a little bit of a peer pressure weak moment in my life. And I did it and kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And, eventually it catches up with you.
Yeah.
And it did, of course, caught up with me. And so I stopped using it in, it was February of 1990.
Okay. And how did you come to that point of hitting rock bottom to say, you know what, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore.
So I was at the dealer's house, had been there for 24 hours. At one point, time just, there is no time. When you're sitting there and you're partying, you just completely lose track of time. And all of a sudden I realized it was 5:00 the next day. And this was before cell phones, and I had just gotten engaged to my ex-husband. And I decided, I think I better go home. And he was there at the door waiting for me. And he had flown home early from a business trip. He was a lawyer. And he actually canceled his depositions because he was so worried about me because he couldn't get a hold of me.
Wow.
And he thought that I had been cheating on him, and I would never have done that. And so I had to tell him I'm a cocaine addict. And that was my bottom. And then my parents showed up like an hour later, and then I had to tell them, and because they were called. And so yeah, and but there was a part of that was so freeing for me, because I don't know about any other type of addiction. That's the only thing that I ever struggled with. But in my mind, everybody else was doing it too, so it was okay.
Right. They're normal, right?
Yeah. I'm like, it's okay. Everybody else is doing it.
Yeah. Society says it's okay.
Yeah. So, why not?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's powerful. Cocaine is very powerful. And I'm grateful that I've never been addicted to any other type of substance, because I've heard there's others that are really hard to get off of. And it wasn't that hard getting sober from that. And I was told, you have to give up drinking as well. And I was like, but I don't get it. Why? Right? A year and a half later, I was driving home from work and I could smell cocaine. Like it used to, I don't know what it smells like today, but it used to have a very, very distinct scent. And all of a sudden I'm driving down the road and I could smell it. And it was then that I understood why it's important that you give everything up, because I probably, if I had started drinking, if somebody put it in front of me, I would have used it for sure. Or I would have called somebody, hey, let me, it would have taken me back.
Yeah.
So I got it. I was like, all right, cool. I don't need this in my life. It's not worth it.
Yeah. It can devastate your life for sure, can it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as you know, I read your book. And when I read books, I highlight things. You can see I got all sorts of yellow highlights in here. And I mean, I could go on and on about the nuggets I got out of here. But I want to talk about chapter 3.
Okay.
And I'd like you to just go over a couple. In chapter 3, you got why we're unhappy. And then you got different subtitles in there: stress and unhappiness, negativity and unhappiness. One of the things I wrote down here, because of course I do financial coaching. Another major stressor that more than 80% of Americans deal with in daily is money, according to a recent survey by Credit Sesame. Also reported that this study is that 40% of people feel shame and roughly 25% have cried over their debt situation. Those numbers are staggering. But not just debt, but any kind of unhappiness people are ashamed of a lot of times, right?
Very much so, of course.
There's another thing in here I have highlighted, and it's called criticizing yourself. And I love this thing you put in the book here. During a recent visit to spend time with my brother and his family, I heard my niece say to herself, "I am such an idiot." I immediately turned to her with a serious look and said, "Please stop calling my niece an idiot." So tell me more about that.
It's so funny. It catches people off guard. I do it all the time. I'll be standing there, with my girlfriends, and somebody say, "Oh gosh, I'm so stupid." And I'll just do not call my friend stupid. I do it with my son. Stop calling my son an idiot.
Yeah.
And people, it catches them off guard, and then they realize it and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're right."
Yeah.
You keep saying that, you're going to believe it.
Right. No, that was very powerful. I love that. I'm going to have to use that on my daughter, because she'll every once in a while say she's stupid or something. And yeah, I'm going to have to use that.
And you know what? I mean, we're all perfectly human. There's times I've caught myself saying, "Oh my God, that was so stupid." And then I'm like, "Stop."
Yeah.
But here's the difference. And that's what I talk about in the book. Like, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to, there's going to be times when you need to forgive yourself, or you say something to somebody, or you get irritated with somebody. I mean, just last night I was yelling at my husband.
Well, he probably deserved it, right?
Yes, he did. No, I mean, that's probably more so because I've been with him 24/7 for 14 months. And that's just more than I want to spend time with anybody.
Are you going to be you're going to be a COVID success though, right? You're not going to be one of the COVID divorces.
There's times just the other day, I looked at him and I go, "Wow, I'm still enjoying your company." And he's like, and of course he's just like, he puts me up here, and he's like, "Well, I mean, of course." And I go, "Yeah, but that's not who I am." I'm like, there's nobody I want to spend this much time with. I'm such a homebody, and I'm an introvert. So I need my alone time.
You need your alone time. Yeah.
But, I know that I'm not perfect. I recognize it. And the key is, don't beat yourself up. I recognize it. I apologize. And, right away, "I'm sorry." I had a little brief moment of insanity, and then I joke, "Yeah, but I'm a woman. I'm allowed to," but, it's just, there's always going to be moments in your life where you're not going to be perfect, and it's okay. And you're going to be angry, and it's okay. And you're going to be sad, and it's okay. The most important thing is to feel it and live it and experience it and go through it. Because see, all of those years I tried to go over it, under it, around it, And until I went through it, that's the only way that I was, coming off of, getting off of drugs was just the very first step.
Right.
Next, I had to start working on me. And I became this self-help junkie to the nth degree, where to this day, I'm constantly listening and reading. And now that I'm promoting my book, I'm taking this Be on TV boot camp that I'm in this week. And then I've got this other coaching program I'm doing. And
then you're on my podcast.
And now I'm on your podcast. So it's just like, every day. And I have a full-time job. So, So it's just about, just being okay with your mistakes, and just don't beat yourself up, and get over it and move on. Life's too short. Don't take yourself so seriously.
Well, and that's the thing. And a lot of people say to me, have you got through the stuff that you've gotten through? And it's like, is there an option?
Right.
I don't know that there's an option. Like you say, just go through it.
Yeah.
So you've gone through a lot, and you've gone through it more than once. I mean, you lose your brother, you're hooked on cocaine, but also you have some great successes.
Oh,
talk about your international figure skating coach, and now you're coaching and speaking and writing books
it's been all good, and I always feel like when one door closes, another one opens. And so every single thing I've done in my life has led me to the next step. And I had an opportunity to start coaching, and I was a decent figure skater, but I never made it to a regional competition. I wasn't great. I mean, I was good, but not good enough to make it to a regional competition. And it's a very difficult sport.
But so weren't you good enough to make it to, what was that thing you got approved to do, but then you didn't do it?
Oh, the Ice Capades. Yes.
Ice Capades.
Yes. I made it into the Ice Capades my senior year of high school, and that was all I was ever going to do with my life. That was it. I never even considered going to college. And 2 weeks after my high school graduation, I get a letter in the mail, because this was 1983, and they said, "Congratulations, you're on a waiting list." And I thought, wow, maybe I should go to college, because my friends were doing. I had no idea, and I was kind of raised. Both of my parents dropped out of high school, and then they ended up getting their GED, and they, had, successful careers or whatever. That was kind of, that was back in the 50s. So it's just a different day and age. So I was raised to take those secretarial classes so you can be a secretary.
Right.
And I did. That's what I ended up doing. And by the way, I did finish my bachelor's degree in March of 2019, 35 years after graduating from high school. And it was more just, just because I have a career, and, it was just, I had to finish it. So the Ice Capades never happened, and that's okay. It led me, other things happened down the road, and I probably would have hit rock bottom much sooner had I traveled with the Ice Capades, because there was a lot of bad stuff going on back then. I'm sure it's changed today, but back then it was very different. So in the early 90s, it was 1993, an ice rink opened up down the street from where I live. I live in Northern Virginia, and I was one of the first coaches on the staff, and I just was planning on teaching group lessons. And then this was right around Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan. And instantly I had 50 little girls who wanted to be competitive figure skaters. So I never had any intention. It just kind of fell into my lap. And like today, there's an ice rink that has opened up down the street with one of the coaches that I coach with. And I mean, I could probably start coaching there, but it would take me years to build up that clientele, because, you're walking in. And so against all odds, I ended up becoming a U.S. national figure skating coach. And when I say against all odds, it's because there's a lot of coaches out there who, won U.S. nationals or competed at the national level, competed at the world level, the Olympic level. And I was working with some of those coaches. And so they look at me and they're looking down on me, because who are you? Right. So I happened to get this one young boy. His mother didn't want him to do it. His father was so against it.
Yeah.
And I had an old pair of skates. I painted them black and gave it to him because he was wearing rental skates and he was doing things that he saw skaters do on TV. And he had just had so much raw talent.
Wow.
So I became like his second mom,
Mm-hmm.
but he reached a level where I really needed to bring in another coach. So I brought in a Russian coach he was, super great guy to work
Mm-hmm.
with. And we ended up taking him to US nationals. So that was against all odds for me, because had I not, put my ego on the shelf and said,
Right.
I need help. I need to bring in
Yeah.
another coach because I want him to do well. And I can only
Right.
take him so far. So I focused on certain things. He focused on mostly on the technical aspects, and it was a good thing because this particular skater, this coach, was in the Olympics as a pair skater. So,
Okay.
he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
I took him to we ended up firing that Russian coach after US nationals because, just long story, I don't even need to go into it. It's just a very toxic environment. So I took him to his first international competition and he got the gold medal there. And
wow.
Yeah. And that was just the highlight of my life at that time because he was like a son to me. He ended up bringing on another female coach who, talk about toxicity. She just hated me at hello. And I ended up stepping down at that point because I wanted to go out on a high. And so I stepped down. Within 6 months, I was pregnant with my son, and it just all kind of happened, the way it was supposed to.
Things happen for a reason, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something you talk a lot about in your book too, is things happen for a reason. So you hadn't had your son yet. Okay.
Nope. Yeah. And that same summer I got to go I accompanied, she was not my student, but they needed somebody to take her to Taiwan for an international competition. And I was close with the family. And so I coached her at this international competition in Taiwan. So that was a really cool experience.
Wow.
And being with people who spoke Chinese was even better because she was Chinese American, but her mother was 100% Chinese from Taiwan. Yeah. And so they both spoke the language. I don't know that I would, again, this was in the late 90s.
Okay.
And it was so funny because she was this beautiful Chinese American figure skater who was potentially going to be competing for Taiwan. That was why she was there. They wanted her to compete on behalf of Taiwan. Yeah. Then she found out she'd have to give up her US citizenship and she said, no way.
Oh, wow.
But we were like celebrities. People were asking me for my autograph and taking our pictures. And I'm like, we're nobody over there. We're nobody. Trust me. Nobody knows who we are.
Well, Sandee, everything happens for a reason. So that was preparing you for.
There you go. There you go. Love your optimism.
For what you're doing now. So now let's talk about what you're doing now with your coaching and, the book and all that.
Yeah.
So how do you go from figure skating coach to life coach and author?
Okay. So after I stopped coaching, I ended up starting an IT recruiting company. And I was able to take it to a 7-figure company in about 18 months.
Wow.
We then had the .com burst of 2001. For anybody who's older than a certain age, you'll remember that. I held on as long as I could. My son was 2.5 years old. My ex-husband, we were still married, was very successful. So I ended up staying home. I'm very nurturing, but I'm not like this sit and play and do crafts kind of thing so being a full-time stay-at-home mom was not for me, but I knew that it didn't make sense for me to go get a job because I wouldn't have been able to make enough money to pay for daycare. And I was not about to put him in daycare. So I ended up just staying home. And that was when I was like, I want to be a life coach. So I went through the certification course. I started presenting workshops. I was teaching the law of attraction before I even knew it was called the law of attraction.
Wow.
Long before The Secret, I didn't even know it was called the law of attraction. It just is what made sense for me. So that's what I started doing. And then I started writing. I wrote a novel and that came out in 2009, finished the second one in 2010. And then my publisher went out of business. It was kind of a small publishing company. I certainly learned a lot, which has prepared me for this book. And did a lot of interviewing. I had a blog talk radio show that lasted for 2.5 years, which is why I'm now doing my own podcast, because I love interviewing people. And I just get so much pleasure out of it. And but then, like I always say, life happens while we're busy making other plans. In January of 2011, I left my husband and had to get a full-time job. I made the decision because he was a lawyer, and I didn't want to put my son through a horrible divorce. So I kind of walked away from a financial perspective, because I knew that was the only way that I could have an amicable divorce, which it was. And I'm very grateful. And to this day, he and I are very good friends. And I don't regret it, because money is not worth it. And I don't care enough about money to make my son miserable. So I had to get a full-time job, went back into recruiting, and I'm still doing that today. But since the book is out, I'm starting to coach again. I'm offering a free retreat to small business owners and entrepreneurs. That's going to be in March. And I'm really excited about that, because I feel like I always want to give back to people. I always want to give back. And then I'm going to be rolling out a couple of online group coaching programs, primarily I'm going to be rolling out one for recruiters. It's a happiness solved for recruiters.
Okay.
So I'm going to be blending the two worlds, because I can offer not only from the business perspective and the recruiting perspective, but your mindset. That's the most important thing.
Right. Now you just talked about giving back and wanting to help people. Reading your book, not only that, but was multiple times where you shouldn't be here.
Yeah. I always forget about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you and I talked about that the first time we talked too, because I shouldn't be here either. The accidents, the alcoholism I dealt with, the accidents I had, I should have been killed in. And I didn't realize you were in multiple accidents you should have been killed in too.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how we get to the point where we are now, to where it is a blessing that we're here to be able to give back and help people?
Well, not only was I in multiple car accidents, and that was all before I started using cocaine.
Yeah.
I wasn't killed in a car accident. And I was, the first one, I was 3 years old.
Right.
Second one, I was not driving. The third one, I was driving. It was in the morning. So alcohol wasn't involved, in any of those. But when I was high on cocaine, I had hoped that I would not wake up. Yeah. I didn't want to wake up. And every day I did, I was like, okay, got to do this again, But yeah, the car accidents, that's the freaky thing. And because, the first one I was hit by a car, and the shoulder was sitting on me completely fine. The second one, we hit a huge tree head on, going probably about 45, 50 miles an hour. And the driver, her face hit the windshield. She had to have 100 stitches. I literally just put my hands out, no seatbelt, nothing. And I should have gone through that windshield. It's just it's a miracle that I didn't go through the windshield.
Yeah.
And the third one, again, window down, no seatbelt. I rolled a car. I think I was putting a cigarette out or something. I don't know what I was doing. All of a sudden, I'm like, car was rolling and rolling, and the window was down. Why wasn't I thrown out of that car?
Right.
Wasn't wearing a seatbelt.
And you talk about that in your book, is things happen that you don't have any control over. Mm-mm. And and the power of the universe is just so big that sometimes you just got to let it happen.
Yeah.
And accept it, right?
Absolutely.
And so many people fight it.
Yeah, resistance is when you're resisting things, you're just pushing them further and further away. I mean, and a lot of times we don't even realize there's that resistance.
Right.
Well,
and then something, and this really, for me, it really hits me a lot, because you talked earlier about jumping into self-help. And personal development. And that's what I did as well. And that's how I've gotten through everything I've dealt with in my life. But there's something in your book I want to read here. Some people think It is narcissistic to believe that you are the most important person in your life. It is actually the opposite. Do you want to be a good mother, father, husband, wife, son, daughter, sister, friend, brother, employee, or lover? My guess is you do. You have purchased this book because you want to be happy and improve yourself. You want more out of life. So let me ask you this. How do you think you can be a good mother, father, husband, wife, son, daughter, sister, brother, friend, employee, or lover if you are not taking care of you? If you want to be all those things, you must take care of yourself first.
I learned that in a 12-step program.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my ex-husband used to think I was a narcissist because I was like, I have to take care of myself first. And he hated the 12-step program because he felt he didn't understand that. Of course, today he does, but at the time, he did not understand what that meant. And I'm like, but no, it's not. It's not being narcissistic.
Yeah.
If you want me to take care of you, I have to take care of myself first.
Yeah. Because if you're not healthy, then nothing else is going to matter.
Right.
People have asked me, what am I most, proud of in my life? My sobriety.
Right.
Because without that, nothing else is there.
Right.
And when I'm coaching clients, that's one thing I talk about is you got to self-care. You got to take care of self-care. That's why everybody should buy Happiness Solved and read the book, because the stuff that you have in here, the self-care and just the exercises you have, can help people get out of a negative thought process or somebody being unhappy.
Right. And I always tell people that it's a short read. And I did that very, very intentionally because nobody is going to read my book and be instantly happy. It doesn't work like that. You have to do the work. You have to do the exercises that are in the back, because without that, because that's what helps you create a habit.
Right.
You have to get in the habit of thinking about what you're grateful for every single day. You have to get in the habit of forgiving others, forgiving yourself. You have to get in the habit of learning how to see things in another way. Like there's always another way to see every situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And right now, I think everybody needs that a lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take a news fast because right now, we don't know what to believe anymore.
I quit watching the news.
Yeah.
I went years without watching the news.
So did I.
And I had some friends that were it was the point where I knew nothing about, something would happen and somebody would say something to me. When did that happen? Oh, a month ago. And we're talking, when mass shootings and I literally did not watch the news at all. Well, I had some friends who were giving me a bad time. And this was back in probably 2012, 2014. And they were talking about something political and something that was going on. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. They're like, what do you mean? You own a business and you don't keep up on current affairs? I go, no, I concentrate on my four walls. I don't care what's going on.
Right. Well, because you can't control any of it. Yeah. So all it does is it just stirs up so much emotion that doesn't need to. You don't need it.
Yeah. Well, and then fast forward to, I think it was last summer, the summer before, we start talking about something. And I said something about something political and they go, well, we're not watching the news. And I said, wait a minute. You chewed me out for not watching it. So now I keep trying to keep up on current events and you're not. They're like, no, we're not anymore. So, sometimes I quit again. I'm like, you know what? I'm done.
Yeah. I don't watch the news, but sometimes like on my phone, I'll get notifications of different things and I'll read headlines. I'm like, okay, that's all I need to know. I don't need to know the details. I know that there was another mass shooting, but I don't need to get into the details of it.
Speaking of that, there is a thing in your book that says something about that, about, shifting your mindset from that, and about taking your notifications off of Facebook
That's
and
right.
Twitter and all that. And I did that years ago, and I've never turned them back on.
Yeah. I don't have notifications. It's except for the news. Like I get the news notifications, but I was going, it became so bad during the day. Every time I had a notification on Facebook, I had to pick my phone up and look.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't have any notifications. They don't come up. I look at it when I look at it. And
that's the best way, isn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us how people can get a hold of Sandee, how they can get a hold of your book. Tell us about your podcast.
Okay, so the book, Happiness Solved, Climbing 100 Steps, can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or you can go to my publisher, which is Archway Publishing. And I always like to throw out, too, if you don't have Amazon Prime, I'm pretty sure on Barnes & Noble, it's always free shipping. Could be wrong, but I thought that I had seen that. And then my book is available hardcover, softcover, and Kindle version as well for those that want the Kindle version. My podcast is called Happiness Solved with Sandee Sgarlata. It's on 15 networks, including Google, Apple, and Spotify. I also convert the audio version to a video and post it on my YouTube channel, which is Happiness Solved. Perfect. Got a little theme going there.
Yeah, little theme. Kind of like theme. I got a theme, never by the book.
There you go. My website is sandeesgarlata.com. Certainly email me, sandy@sandeesgarlata.com. And Instagram and Facebook is at Coach Sandee Sgarlata. And on my Instagram and Facebook pages, I have a link tree. So if you go to the link tree, everything, you can get access to everything right there.
Perfect. Okay. I'll have Rebecca post all that later.
Okay.
Perfect.
Sounds
I appreciate
good.
you being on. And yes, for anybody, this is an easy read, but very well worth the read. A lot of great content in there. I got some homework to do now, Sandee. I got a lot of highlights, but now I got the homework to do.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you
so
for being
much.
on. I appreciate it.
You are so much fun. And I'll have to get right back at you and you can come on my podcast.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Kelly.
All right. So thanks so much for listening to Never Buy the Book. Share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. As we close today, remember, if you're not doing it by the book, it just might mean you're onto something great. Until next time, be great.